Schwartz here from Sales for Nerds, kicking off the Sales for Nerds podcast. If you feel more comfortable with SQL than sales calls, more at home writing test suites than proposals, more interested in crunching numbers than shaking hands, if you think networking should be about routers rather than cocktails with strangers, if you're more interested in debating code editors than negotiating deals, but somehow you ended up responsible for some of those sales and marketing activities, this is the podcast for you. All right, today on Sales for Nerds, we're lucky to have Erik Luhrs, known as the Bruce Lee of lead generation. He's the creator of Subconscious Lead Generation and Guru Selling, and the author of Be Do Sale. Erik works with clients to create positioning and messaging that activates and attracts the subconscious mind of their perfect prospects. This sounds like it could be useful outside of sales. He's also a master practitioner of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and certified in the Silva method and accelerated learning. He's been featured in Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur. He's been on Fox Business News, Selling Power, Chief Executive. So Erik, thanks for joining us today. What do you have in your glass?
I have Blue Moon.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and.
I'm not a wine guy. So.
Not a wine guy. I understand. And beer is a little bit easier in terms of just like the general serving size is a little bit more amenable to an interview. I'm going to pour a glass of, this is a Pali Wine Company Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara County. And if you're hearing that strange sound, that is the Venturi aerator that we tested out a couple episodes ago, and found out that it does seem to accelerate the aeration of the wine and make it taste better. Let me see. That'll work.
Okay.
Erik, one of the things you specialize in is helping companies that are stuck in their sales. Sort of, I almost think of it as the engine has stalled out, and you restart the sales engine. And I think there's so many companies. If you ask anybody, they all say they want more sales, whether or not they're growing or not. Everyone always wants more. How do you know where you should begin? Because I feel like if you look at your pipeline, you can say, well, if I had 10 times more leads, I could screw up this stuff 10 times more often. Or if I could close 50% better, I wouldn't need as many leads and so on. And I feel like a lot of people kind of go around in circles and they don't understand where to focus.
Well, a good question. I always say to people, I mean, I have a lot of oddball sayings. I guess. Whatever comes to mind is actually whatever you can quote me. Whatever comes out of my mouth, But I say to people, the way you come in is the way you go out. So what happens is that people tend to look at, excuse me, in the sales process, they'll look at the moment of problem per se. So, I'm getting pushback on the proposal, or they're asking for too many demos, or there's too many people getting involved in the decision-making process, and all the crap, whatever that comes up during a sales process. And so they hyper-focus on that moment, and they'll say, oh, okay, we got to get better at converting, of getting the whole decision-making team on board, or building more rapport with them, or we've got to get our demo more crystal clear, or we've got to make our proposals more specific. So they'll hyper-focus on wherever they perceive the stall to be, or the wall to be, and if you look at it from the way you come in is the way you go out, instead of looking at where you perceive the problem, where you run into the wall. I mean, the whole problem with running into a wall is that you were driving towards a freaking wall.
Right.
So you didn't just like wake up and you're facing a wall, right? It's like, you don't wake up in the steering, in front of the steering wheel, the car's already against the wall. You took a map and you drove down certain streets, and suddenly you turned down this alley and you gunned it, bam, it's like, so it's like, okay, maybe my map was screwed up to begin with. Maybe I'm still listening to MapQuest and turning left when I'm supposed to turn right. And anybody who's used MapQuest knows what the hell I'm talking about. The classic left turn. Anyway, so, go back to the beginning. So what I'm always looking at is I look at the process from, like, sales is the last step, and before sales is lead generation. So if you say, okay, look, I want to make sales more effective. Let's look at it like a machine. You say, I want the gear that is sales, I want it to spin like really fast. Well, you could put a handle on that gear and you can crank it with your hand as fast as possible, but there's only so far that you can get grunting it out.
Right.
Or you say, well, if I want that gear to spin faster, I can make a bigger, better gear attached to it, and that bigger gear that's more effective, for every one churn or for every click that it makes, it moves the sales gear 2 clicks, right?
Right.
So now all of a sudden I'm using the power of leverage and force acceleration, etc. Great. Okay, so I got my lead gen, which is doing more work and spinning the sales gear even faster. That's great. And then you just take a step back and you say, okay, but what makes lead generation work more effectively? And this is how I come to the constructs that I work with. And I realized it was positioning, how you position the company. Now, that's your way in, really. How you attract the mind of your prospect. That's the way in. So if you build an even bigger, better gear, that is positioning, and you slap that on the end of the lead gen, and you spin that thing. So for every 1 click that thing is making, it's turning the gear for the lead gen 2 clicks, which is turning the sales 4 clicks. All of a sudden, the force multiplier going on here is incredible. And I'm not hitting that plateau in the sales. So it's the same construct as, like, if I position very well, I've already pulled myself out of being commoditized. So I'm no longer being looked at as, I'm another company that, the world's next great CRM. You know what I mean? Like, every freaking week, everybody's like, hey, we have a new, great new business software. What is it? It's a CRM. Oh my God. Seriously? Like, oh no, but we're better than, I know you're better than every other freaking CRM out there. So, but the first thing is to differentiate through positioning effectively, so much so that nobody else is. Your prospects aren't looking for other solutions. You've already pulled yourself away from them. Then having lead gen that is really, getting people at a gut level. It is really making them feel something and impacting them, so that they're having an experience of you, your company, your product, your service, your value, long before they talk to anybody. So that by the time they're talking to a salesperson, 85% of the sale, which is really a feeling of rapport, a feeling of trust, a feeling of contextual connection, a feeling that you understand their problem and that you potentially have a viable solution. I mean, all of that initial junk is already, I shouldn't say initial junk, but all of that stuff is already handled, so that by the time they're talking to a salesperson, it's really just cleaning up details, as opposed to, saying, I'm not going to do any positioning, and I'm not, I'm going to half-ass lead gen. I'm just going to put my name out there a couple of times, and, I don't care about getting people emotionally or creating feelings for people. I'm just going to let them know I exist, and then I'm going to make my salespeople grunt it out. And so your salespeople have to do all the work that your non-existent positioning and your lackadaisical lead generation was supposed to be doing. And then you scream at your salespeople, right. Why aren't you making sales?
And sometimes if you're the founder, you're doing the sales yourself, and you're beating up yourself because you haven't done some of this preparation.
Well, right. If you say, okay, I'm the sales guy, your first thought is, how do I attack a customer, or how do I attack a prospect and start, yammering at him to give me a check? And it's, to me, rather than going after, that whole construct of, like, pick up a phone, pick up the phone, that's attacking. Calling people out of the blue and saying things to them, it's a form of hunting.
Right.
I don't care if it's on a phone; it's still a form of hunting. So, what it's like, if we put it into the hunting, let's use the hunting thing, right? Um, you can walk around the forest with your rifle, waiting for something to move, right? Or, you can just go sit, sit in your nice warm truck until you're ready. Then you walk out to the duck patch and, you just hide behind a bush and you go, wah, wah, and then all of a sudden it's like, wah, wah, you hear, poof. It's like, so you're making that connection. You're getting them to resonate with you. You're drawing them out, putting out bear bait, putting out deer bait, putting out whatever it is that you're hunting. How do you draw them out so that you get them where you want them, as opposed to I'm going to go wandering around until I walk into the bear's den, which it's pitch black in here. And now all of a sudden the bear has just as much chance to claw me to death as I do of shooting it. It's not a good strategy. It's your position. You're in a horrible position, so you have no positioning at all, and your lead gen, which was to draw it out, is non-existent. So you just basically go in there, going toe to toe. Any hunter would tell you, well, that's a stupid idea, and yet, what do we do in sales? Well, go walk into the bear den with a single shot in with your manual rifle and hope for the best.
So I can imagine a bunch of people listening to this right now saying, all of this sounds great, Erik. I would totally love to have my positioning do a bunch of work for me and have my lead gen engage people on an emotional level, and all I have to do with the sales part is go in and clean up the details. Mm. But I do sell a boring CRM or whatever it is that's not, it's not a new Tesla, it's not a cancer drug. How do I do that? Do you have examples or ways to think about that can help people kind of break out of that framework?
So let's say that you're selling what would theoretically be commoditized. So let's take a look at something like Dr. Oz or the doctors on TV, right? Theoretically, they're selling medicine or medical diagnostics or medical prescription, etc. So that medical perspective, which you can get from your doctor, you don't have to, and your doctor is like the millions of other doctors out there and the other medical shows and everything else like that. So in that realm, and then there's many different ways to position yourself. So I have 10 different aspects of positioning that I look at. But in that realm, I would look at what I call the unique expertise position, which is building your expertise, especially if you're like a solo practitioner or something like that. So it's not that you're out there, Dr. Oz takes, a contrarian perspective sometimes to how you should do medicine. Well, but I mean, but if you're somebody who holds that there are holes in the medical establishment or the way that medicine is practiced, to be fair, I mean, we're kind of still doing stuff like we did in the 1800s. I mean, we could kind of come forward in some aspects, but so if you say, if you believe in that, and then so you're looking for alternative things, Dr. Oz presents that perspective. So what is, what's a part of your audience? So let's say you're a lawyer. Okay, great. Now, if you're a lawyer, obviously the worst possible thing in the world is to say, look, I'm going to practice general law. So right. Bring me your car accidents and bring me your remortgaging documents and bring me your patent applications. No. Okay. Same thing with MDs. They're going to they're not going to make the big bucks. They're not going to get known as an expert. They're looking for, I just want a nice steady stream of clients. Okay, great. But if you want to be like a big money doctor, you become a neurocardiology thoracic surgeon. You know what I mean? Nuclear threat. I'm the only guy who can use this specialized laser pen in the United States to cut people open. And, so by that specialization, they have it. Same thing with law. It's like, okay, great. I'm going to focus in on I don't know, let's say divorce, okay? And you say, well, there's lots of divorce attorneys out there. Great. But I'm going to focus on, the needs of wives of high-end, high-end money guys who cheated on their spouse.
Okay.
So, if your husband is wealthy but he never cheated on you, I don't want to talk to you. But if your husband is wealthy and he cheated on you, then there is an emotional as well as a financial toll that has been taken on you that most other lawyers just don't even look at. They simply look at a division of the assets, but there is nothing that can fill that hole that has been ripped in your heart by the infidelity. Now, I'm just pulling this crap out of thin air, but there it is. And now somewhere, I will guarantee you that if I was, John Smith attorney and I was putting it out there, and especially in the neighborhood I live in, I could walk around and probably say that, and they'd be like, he feels my pain. And all of a sudden, that's my position. So, now, that becomes my thing, is the emotional cost of infidelity in high-income families.
Okay, so that's a great example, and I think everyone's going to get that. At the same time, some people are going to say, but that's cheating because divorce with infidelity, that's inherently emotional. Of course, it's easy for you to come up with an emotional angle there. I don't do that stuff. I do the, estate planning for the people who aren't divorced, or I do, I implement business systems for whatever. Like, how do those people find that kind of emotional resonance that you would get as a specialized divorce lawyer?
Well, the first thing I would say is that if you're saying my market doesn't appreciate differentiation, you're probably in the wrong market.
Okay.
Or you're looking at your market the wrong way.
Okay.
So if you say, well, that's, cheating, or that's cheesy or something like that, it's not cheesy, it's not cheating. It's simply saying, look, I'm going to choose to, and you have to choose people you want to work with. So I'm putting that from the perspective of somebody who was an attorney who actually wanted to work with women who had high net worth wives who had suffered infidelity, right? It's not a case of, like, anybody can sit there and say, well, who has a lot of money? If you go at it from that perspective, then you're already entering in a lot of dissonance, a lot of disconnect from your target market, because you're basically saying, look, I'm choosing to work with you not because I really care about you or have an affinity for your situation. I'm simply choosing you because you're a big paycheck for me. So it becomes cheesy and cheap if you go at it from that perspective.
Well, and I'm not saying it's cheesy and cheap. I'm saying that and I think it's a great example. I like the example. Right. I'm saying, okay, let's go one step further and say that you've got a successful business, but it involves something that doesn't carry the emotional weight of divorce with infidelity, which is most of us, right? But most of us find some way to differentiate, even though we don't have that. So if we can sort of like take it down from the atomic level emotional situation of that kind of divorce to a more mundane business where someone's probably scratching their head saying, well, that's great if you're a divorce lawyer, but it doesn't apply to me at all. Can it apply to someone who does something that's quote unquote boring, that doesn't typically have emotional resonance?
Right. So another way to approach it is what I call the unique problem position, which is, how do you look at first off, what is the problem you solve? So let's say that you've done very well and you've chosen the right target audience, because I would say the majority of businesses that have problems, they actually are going after the wrong target market. So that's an inherent problem and something that I'm always trying to solve for people. But let's just say that you've done well, you've chosen the right target market. Now it's okay, what perspective do you have on the problem or problems you solve that is different than other people? Because if you're out there saying, look, like a financial planner, I became a financial and I'm going to come right back to it. Say, well, why did you become a financial? Because three questions I always ask people at the beginning is the who, what, and why. I go very deep on who are you really, why, what are you actually doing, and then why do you do this? So if you've chosen to be a financial planner, again, because of the potential paycheck, you're already in, again, you're already putting that energy out there of I'm in this for the money. I'm not in this for you. So it becomes much more difficult for you to figure out, how do I make a connection, make that ultimately make some sort of emotional connection with my marketplace, because you're already saying, look, I'm basically a panderer for money here. That's it. I really don't, if I could catch fish and make as much money and have it as easy, I'd go do that. Right. I don't care what it is. I'm just here for the paycheck. So, yeah, and if you're that kind of person, you should go work for somebody instead of trying to open your own business. So, but if you're a financial planner and you have a real reason, like, my family, my parents died broke and poor because they had no financial plan. And my father was a factory worker. And he believed that the factory was going to take care of him. Hell, they said they were going to take care of him. And then they happily evaporated his, pension in, 2 or 3 contracts over 20 years after he had left the factory. Right. And there's no way to, and nobody knows where the hell that money went. But somebody's left all the way to the bank. But we can't track it now. And so I'm out here, and the problem that I'm looking to solve is, people who are, suffering from either the loss of a pension or the partial loss of a pension, who worked very hard, but now they're pension compromised. And, my perspective is that, you have to, you're going to have to reevaluate how, if you're preparing for retirement, then you might have to elongate it, or, you might have to put it off, or look to have a second career afterwards, et cetera. And how do you choose that career? And then how do you balance your money? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm taking a different look. I've got my target market, and I'm taking a look at their problem. So that problem, other financial planners might say, yeah, sure, I'll work with you if you've lost part or all of your pension, et cetera. But I'll also work with your 20-year-old son who's, the third member of a new tech startup. Well, then you're not really focused on me, and you can't have a unique you can't offer that. You can't really say that you have a unique perspective on my particular problem, because you're, again, a generalist, and you can't really say that you have that connection or understanding of my problem. And so all these things feed into each other. So again, it's like if I really know my target market, and I really resonate with my target market, and I chose to do what I'm doing because of this resonance and this desire to work with my target market, then it becomes much easier. Again, the people who have the biggest problems are the people who are chasing a check as opposed to solving a problem for a reason.
They're money-based instead of being mission-based or people-based.
Right. I mean, we all want to get rich. Trust me, I like getting money too, just like everybody else. The issue is, and it's and you could still have your mission and be, a good person, or however you want to put it, and still make lots of money. I think Steve Jobs, was an incredible human being, I mean, aside from coming up with the iPhone and the iPad and everything else, like, and revitalizing Apple, he was quite a philanthropist, but he was human just like everybody else, died from cancer, et cetera. So you can still be a human and still do superhuman things based on, again, understanding who your target market is and what problem you really want to solve, et cetera.
Okay. So suppose that my business is, I help companies integrate their tax systems or something like that, right? It's just boring as can be. What can I do to sort of give off that aura or that energy that you kind of called into practice with a divorce lawyer or with a financial planner? Because again, you went from divorce to death, and I think those are great. I think when you have the opportunity, by all means, pull in the most critical parts of it. Right. But some of what we deal with is not actually life or death. It is more dollars and cents or something. But how do we connect that in a way that goes beyond the spreadsheet and really does get us in the gut?
So let's say that you've done all your positioning. You've gotten yourself positioned quite well. If you position yourself quite well, you should have very little problem in lead gen. But we're kind of going into that realm of lead gen. Like, so how do I start baiting the bear out of the cave, right? How do I start getting them to respond to me, or contact me, as opposed to the guy down the street? So there's really only three things that human beings respond to: pain, pleasure, and a little bit logic, or pain, gain, or basic logic. Basic logic is aiming at the conscious mind. It will get the least amount of response, and it will take you. So if I send out 100 different ads, all trying to talk to the conscious level mind or the logical mind, I'm going to get a very low response rate to every ad. Mm-hmm. The highest response rate is pain, and then in the middle is gain, and it's how much does the gain resonate with people. Pain, if you do it right, will get you a lot of responses and will start to differentiate you, because if you can talk to a pain let me take it. So, for example, you say, like people say, hey, Eric, like companies will say, I want more, we want more sales, we want more sales, we want more sales, right? So if I go out and I say, hey, do you want more, are you suffering with not enough sales? Yes, we're suffering with not enough sales. There's not a big jump at that emotionally. Why? Because the term more sales, not enough sales, these are very generic terms.
Right.
So there's no real specificity. There's no real, that's how I verbalize it to myself. Because, like you said earlier, I study the subconscious mind. So what I'm always looking at is, how do people internally communicate a problem to themselves?
Great, yeah.
So if I can get the language pattern that is closest to to the problem that they're trying to solve, that they use internally, the more luck I will have in getting their interest. For example, let's say I'm a sales manager at a company. And I call it a level 10 problem. My deepest problem is that I'm afraid my wife is going to leave me. And that's like the burning hot, red, painful problem that I have right now. So what the human mind does is, human beings, we're constantly trying to avoid pain. So we actually start doing like a Russian doll thing, where we start stacking a doll on top of a doll on top of a doll, etc. So we go, well, I'm afraid my wife is going to divorce me. And I'm afraid she's going to divorce me because I'm not spending enough time with her. And I'm not spending enough time with her because I'm overly busy at work. And I'm overly busy at work because my guys aren't selling enough stuff. And my guys aren't selling enough stuff because they're not getting enough leads. And they're not getting enough leads because the marketing department isn't really good at marketing. And the marketing department isn't really good at marketing because they only know how to spend money and hire advertising agencies. And, and the reason that we're not getting anybody looking at us is because the advertising agency doesn't really know how to do anything to draw attention to us. So if I go out and I say to this guy, hey, do you want, so what I need is, so at a generic level, I need better ads. So if I go to, do you want better ads? Yeah, sure. But there's no real emotion. But if I can pull a couple of those Russian dolls out, and I could say, are your sales guys not selling enough because they're lazy and they're waiting for leads? Or they're just not selling enough because your marketing department sucks, or if I can go even a little deeper, are you worried, are you working too much because your salespeople aren't selling enough? Yeah. I'm getting much closer to that guy's specific pain and the way he internalizes it and the way he linguistically internalizes it to himself. Yes. When I start getting towards the realm of working too much, it's getting towards that real pain, which is the potential that my wife is going to leave me. So, I now I can make a real resonance with him. So, and then I can draw, the line to, here's the solution that I have for you working too much, because you have to deal with your sales guys too much, et cetera. Now all of a sudden I've made that connection. So but you can say better ads is a very commoditized thing, because just like any marketing or advertising agency could say the same crap. I could do better ads than that. I could do better ads than that. I could do, yeah, that's all level 1 surface shallow crap. I want to talk to at least a level 5, level 6 pain linguistically that this guy has, so that he goes, yeah, you're really resonating with the problem that the real problem that I care about, that I have right now, that I care about solving. So the shallow stuff, do you want more, a better ad? Everybody will go yes. It's the same thing like when you say to somebody, like, do you want to be a millionaire? Well, sure. Okay, great. What are you doing to, become a millionaire? Well, nothing. Okay, then you didn't really want to be a millionaire. It's just a preference. So we've got to go after what motivates people, what makes people flinch. And pain, at the end of the day, sad to say, is the thing that makes people flinch the fastest. I'm going to get a much bigger reaction out of you. I smack you in the back of the head than if I walk in front of you and say, hey, why don't you come up and take a walk with me?
Yeah, I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's something that I certainly learned the hard way, and I think for the folks listening to a podcast that is called Sales for Nerds, after all, we tend to overweight the impact of logic and underestimate the importance of some of the other stuff. And I've certainly wasted a bunch of time doing this, sort of hammering on people with a spreadsheet or an ROI calculator or something like that. And all the numbers might be right, but it's not speaking the language, to your point, of what they really care about. And I guess kind of the way I look at it now is sort of like an inverse Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you've got your basic symptom on the bottom, and some people will say, well, great, they've got the symptom that I solve. I'm done. I've got the sale in the bag. Or then they'll go the next step and say, okay, well, what's the business impact of that symptom? Right? It might be that we're not going to make our numbers, but then beyond that, there's some kind of life impact, something that affects the identity of the person because of that business impact, which is my wife's going to leave me, my kids hate me, et cetera, et cetera. And they will do anything to change that. They may or may not take action on the lower level stuff because, first of all, there's like 50 options for them to do something there. They can't possibly know what the right one to pick is, right? Which kind of goes back to, here's why the sales cycles get stalled, because you're not really speaking to anybody. You're just out there with a whole bunch of other people offering to produce better ads or whatever the generic message is.
Right. So, I mean, what I like to do is I like to bring feelings to logic-based sales. So, and the reason is very simple. And this should actually appeal to the logic people out there, even though it's not logic, it should definitely get logic people thinking. There is a system in the United States, a system in the human body called the enteric nervous system, and it is the nervous system that surrounds your throat and your stomach and your intestines, etc. And it has brain cells in it, like the brain in your head. And when people buy happily, there's like the panic buy or something. You're never going to get repeat business or a happy customer from somebody who bought because they had a gun pointed at their head.
Right.
But if you get somebody to buy happily, then they're going to have a great experience. They're going to refer you. They're going to come back, et cetera, et cetera. So when people buy and they've been able to go through through a process that makes them feel good, et cetera, about buying whatever they're about to buy, the enteric nervous system is actually what creates feelings in your gut. Whatever emotion, if you're in love, it's your enteric nervous system firing off. If you're afraid, it's your enteric nervous system firing off. Whatever we perceive in the human body as a feeling is actually our enteric nervous system firing off at some level of our digestive tract. So, ultimately, people buy based on their feelings, and they justify later with logic. People buy based on which part of their enteric nervous system is firing off, and then when they get home, out of the situation, out of the emotion, out of the moment, that's when they go, yeah, okay, it made sense to buy this television, blah 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 blah. It's bigger, it's nicer. They logically explain to themselves. My wife explained to me we had a perfectly good dining room set, which somehow I had to replace 2 weeks ago. And whatever. And I'm like, okay, I went to this, but I didn't need it, but it was like, I'm in the store. I'm like, oh, this is a pretty one, and before I know it, I've got a 12-person dining table. Okay. What the hell I need that for? I'm not Ebenezer Scrooge going to have my family over, but whatever. So it's the enteric nervous system. So ultimately, our sales, or the buying and selling, happens at the enteric level, and then comes later, and then later comes the logical justification. And when people, especially like in technical or specialized industries or something, when they go after sales, like you said, they go total logic. So it's almost like they're ignoring the entire process. They are ignoring the entire process that the other human being, that the buyer, has to go through to make to make the emotional decision. And I don't even know if it's so much of a decision as a compulsion. The emotional compulsion that has to happen for me to sign the purchase order or to pull out the credit card or whatever. It's really an emotional compulsion at a specific moment. Okay, their enteric nervous system is being fired off, at whatever point, driven by whatever concepts and constructs are in their, or in their subconscious at that moment. Because nobody logically sits there and says, okay, I'm going to make myself feel happy, or I'm going to make myself feel loved. That's like those stupid affirmations. I am valuable and people like me. I am valuable and people. You don't believe that crap because you don't have any feeling about it. It's just words. You get pissed off because you're like, I don't believe it. I don't believe I'm happy, and I don't.
And why am I saying this stuff to myself?
Why am I making myself angry every time that I tell myself I'm happy? And that I know people hate me, and yet I'm telling myself people love me. So that's the thing it's the mindset of the logical person, right? Like, especially like in computers and IT and stuff like that. They're very used to. They're very used to working logically, trying to logically work out the problems with setting up a system, or a lawyer, the logical problems of setting up a plan for this client or something like that. So they're very good they're very good in their day-to-day work of logicking, but when they try to appeal to a prospect, notice that it's not. Nobody says I'm trying to, I'm trying to logic more to my prospects.
Right.
I'm trying to appeal to my prospects. Well, appealing is not a logic thing. Appealing is a feeling thing. When you look at if you're a guy at the bar, or a girl at the bar, and you're looking at, somebody across the bar that you find physically attractive, you're not sitting there saying, I like their eye to nose ratio versus their, the index ratio of their ears versus the flatness of their head. You don't say that. You go, wow, hot. And all of a sudden, enteric nervous system, bang, somewhere right around your heart, which is actually your esophagus firing off. And you go, oh, I'm falling in love. Actually, no, your esophagus is just firing off. If you ate a burrito, you'd probably have roughly the same reaction, except that you wouldn't be looking at her falling in love. You'd be looking at your burrito falling in hunger. But you're equating with, this is nice, tasty food. So I'm going to equate this emotional response in my brain to a different emotional response if I'm looking at her across the bar. But it's the same part of your enteric nervous system firing off. So in logic, if what you sell is highly logical, even though it seems highly illogical, going emotional or going for a feeling response, since ultimately your prospect is going to make an enteric decision or an enteric compulsion to buy your product or service, you're much better talking to their subconscious, activating their subconscious, which is directly connected to their, to fires off the enteric nervous system, working that angle. You're going to be much better off than saying, I'm going to list out a bunch of data points, features and benefits that I think are logical and that somebody should, quote unquote, should want.
So I think some people are going to say, well, but that's all sneaky and it's manipulative and so on. And if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, if I position right, if I'm doing this for the right reasons to help people in my target market that I can help, I'm not convincing them to do something against their interest. I'm helping them make the decision that they want to make. Whereas if I throw a bunch of logic at them, they're not going to make the decision and they're never going to get help.
Well, I mean, ultimately, people are always looking to solve the problem that they perceive they have. But what happens a lot of times is, if you leave your prospect to their own devices, I always say people's biggest problem is that they don't know what their biggest problem is. So a lot of times, first off, your target market doesn't even understand the problem they're trying to solve.
Okay.
So if they don't understand the problem they're trying to solve, guess what's going to happen? They're going to end up bringing in a solution they're going to bring in the wrong solution for the wrong problem. So you've done a huge disservice to your target market if all you do is say, I'm going to say the same thing as everybody else, and I'm going to give you the same perspective as everybody else, and I'm going to do the same work as everybody else. Then you're the same. And if you're actually going to do stuff that's similar to the same as what other people do, then guess what? There is absolutely no need in this world for you to have your business. Okay. You don't need to. Why do you need to open your doors? I'm going to make you a hamburger. I'm 2 doors down from McDonald's, and I'm going to make you a hamburger that tastes just like their hamburger and French fries that taste just like their French fries. And I'm going to charge you exactly the same amount of money. Okay. What's the purpose? So now tell me how to market my business. Close your doors and go work for McDonald's. No, I want my own. Then you have to do something. You have to be in some way, shape, or form different. There has to be. You have to have had a perception of your value. So yeah, there has to be first that differentiation, that reason for why you're doing what you're doing. But once you have a genuine concern, a genuine way to want to help people, then there's nothing really sneaky. I mean, sneaky would be like you think like looking at it like it's brainwashing. Okay. Well, am I forcing these people to take mind-altering drugs? No. Am I holding them against their will? No. But they're in your store. They're talking to you. You're saying sneaky things to them. Sneaky things like showing them how their life is going to be better if they buy this television over that television. That kind of sneaky? Yeah. They could survive with a 40-inch television. They don't need a 55-inch television. Well, no, nobody needs a 40 freaking inch television. You can very easily live with a 20-inch television if you all want to sit very close to it. You can. It's going to show you the same. It's going to show you the same episode of Game of Thrones as the 50-inch television. It's just going to be on a 20-inch television. But it's like I'm explaining to them the value of the experience. Why are you here to buy this television? So, I mean, when was the last time you went to buy a television? Guy walks up to you and he says, what's the normal thing? Hey, what can I help you with today? Oh, I'm here to buy a television. Oh, great. Do you have one in mind? Yeah, I was thinking about a 50-inch television. Okay. Great. You're looking at the 50-inch television, blah, 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 and stuff like that. Maybe they'll say, hey, we're having a special on the 60-inch. It's only $300 more, but you get this, that, and the other thing. They'll do the little push. Or, you walk into the store, and somebody says, hey, what are you looking for today? I'm looking for a television. Great. Why? Huh? Well, I'm in a TV store. Aren't you supposed to ask me what I want? I am. Why do you want a television? Do you have a television already? Yes. Does it still function? Well, yeah. Why are you looking for a new one? Well, I'm tired of the old one. What makes you tired about it? You see how all of a sudden I'm having a much different conversation? Yes. And it's not sneaky, One of the most underutilized questions in the world is why? We're so busy trying to sell you something, we don't know why the hell you want it.
Yes, and I think if there's one thing that I wish people would do, it's figure out why people want to do things instead of just assuming that they're talking to you, so you should start rattling off your features from the top of the list. Yeah. It wastes everybody's time, and it's so annoying.
I know people call me up and they're like, Erik, I want a Facebook strategy to build my XYZ company. Why? What do you mean why? I want more clients. Why do you want a Facebook process? Well, because everybody's doing Facebook. Oh, so you want to be like everybody else? Well, no. You want to be different than other people? Well, yes. But you want me to set you up to be like everybody else? No. Okay. So are you having like an identity crisis here? Because you're telling me that you want to be different than everybody else, but you want to do what everybody else is doing. Well, no, but everybody else is doing it and they're making money. Okay. So you want to make money. You want to increase sales. Yes. Okay. So tell me about what's working now and why you want to abandon it or change it or add to it, etc. Well, right now we're just using direct mail. Okay. Have you maximized it? Well, what does that mean? Well, let's have a conversation about maximizing direct mail. Blah, 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 blah. And now all of a sudden, I've taken them completely in a different direction. But I'm trying to serve their desired outcome. Same thing with that television. Why are you here to buy a 50-inch television? Because at the end of the day, the guy might leave there with a 40-inch television. Did I lose a little bit of money on the sale? Yeah, whatever. But he might be much happier. Or hell, he might leave there with an 80-inch television. I might be delivering an 80-inch projection television with a surround. Hell, I might be building him a home theater by the end of this thing. So I just turn a $650 TV sale into an $8,500 home theater installation, simply by asking the question, why?
And you made the guy happier.
Exactly. He's very happy to he's very happy to add an extra zero on the end of the check and change that 6 to an 8. And he's leaving out, my God, I can't wait to have you, because my experience is going to be, because that's, I follow, not to get spiritual or everything, but I follow a couple different spiritual teachers. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Abraham Hicks, the creators of the laws of attraction. But there's a great saying that Abraham has, which is, you only want the things you want because you believe you'll feel better in the having of them. So at the end of the day, no matter what it is we want, a new employee, a jet engine for my plane, my dog groomed, the most money out of my divorce, etc. Whatever it is that we want, we only want it because we think we'll feel better in the having of it. So the closer I can get to the experience that is going to be this great and wonderful outcome at the end of this process, the more I feel compelled to engage this process.
And that's the gain seeking.
Right. Now, so pain is a way to get attention, but you can't keep people's attention with pain. So I can get their attention with initial pain, but I better very quickly switch over to gain, or I'm going to burn people out. Because it's like, if I poke your nerve, great, I'll get your attention. But I can't keep going, does that hurt, does it hurt, does it hurt, does it hurt? Because very quickly, you're just going to run the hell away from me if I keep talking about your pain. I can get your attention with it, but then I got to switch very quickly to the gain that you're looking for. And that the way that I entice you into that gain is by finding out why you want it, how you want it, what you think it's going to do for you, etc.
Got it. Okay. Now, you started off, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, appealing to people's subconscious, and then we got into this tangent of asking people why. And I don't think that the why, it might expose something going on in the subconscious, but it's not really a tricky technique or anything like that. It's just actually caring about the other person is the way I think about it. Mm-hmm. Are there things that we should think about explicitly to say, let me ask some questions that help me get at the subconscious of this person I'm talking to?
Well, why is actually probably the most powerful as a basis for a question. It's probably the most powerful for activating the subconscious, because theoretically there is no such thing as why.
Okay. Because
it's purely conjecture. Why do you want a bigger television? Now, I need a bigger television, or the fire-breathing dragon outside my house is going to burn down my house tonight. Okay, well, that would be a logic-based reason for wanting my 60-inch television. But for most decisions, for virtually all decisions, when you ask the why, that's when their brain starts to create a reason. So it's creating the reason out of the ethers. You know what I mean? Well, I want it because of this, but also because of that, and it's going to help me with it. And the why is what gets that subconscious going. But if we're looking at the subconscious and we're looking at, trying to figure out the pain, basically it's like, it's really engaging and having an open mind and feeling the feeling of the response. So if you feel that somebody is being guarded with you, like when they're answering you, then you could say, okay, for some reason they're feeling uneasy, and I want to lower that wall of defense. How can I lower that wall of defense? So you can say something to the like if they answer and you go, okay, I appreciate the response you're giving me. And I get the feeling that there's more to this. There's something below the surface of, you said, well, I want the TV just so I can have, so I can see it better. But I'm getting a feeling that there's something more. Is there something more to this? Is there a deeper reason for this? Well, and you keep giving, you keep asking questions that open up basically voids or loops for people so that they can kind of walk into it. I'm feeling this. I'm getting, and you can even start saying that I'm feeling. You're going into that realm of feeling. So it's really, are you offering language that's allowing people to explain and expose more, or are you asking questions that are closing people off? So yes, no questions are obviously, you're giving people no way to get into, to start, you're not letting people draw out their subconscious or to activate their subconscious. Do you want a new television? Yes. Would you like to buy it today? Yes. Do you want to pay too much for it? No. Okay. I mean, so you're basically locking people down, right. And that's a sales technique. I mean, there are some old time trainers that still teach that crap. They're like, lock them into those yes no questions. Get them to say yes 4 times in a row, and then you'll lock in the sale. Is it Tuesday? Yes. Do you like the suit you're wearing? Yes. Do you want a television? Yes. Would you like to buy it now? Yes. Okay, great. It's $780. Yeah. I got you 4 yeses in a row. Is this your wife? Yes. Okay, great. Is it Tuesday? Yes. Are you in a TV store? Yes. Oh. So that, but that's not letting that subconscious out. So activating the subconscious, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we do this. And if you're looking, it depends where you are. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to do lead generation and I want to activate the subconscious mind, then your messaging has to be something where you start talking to that inner dialogue that they're having, right? And then you're creating a process that engages them at that subconscious level. It kind of keeps them going at that subconscious level and building rapport, et cetera. If you're face to face with them, then you're at the stage of the actual sale. You're in the sales process. So your questioning then has to be more. So at that point you have to, you can use a series of questions. You can use some questions in like an email or a letter or something like that, or in your ads, but you can't use too many because you're not actually having a conversation with this person. So what you do to activate the subconscious mind is dependent upon where you are. But the key thing is that ultimately you want to keep a feeling thing going on as much as possible, either in your marketing or your lead gen messaging, or in your positioning, or even in the sales process. So even when you're, say, going for the close, instead of saying something like, do you want to buy now? You can say something more, do you want to buy now? Because all of a sudden they hear that word buy and it feels like commitment, and commitment feels like lots of money, and lots of money feels like, wait a minute, I might lose money. But if you say something along the lines of, does that feel like what you want? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, great. Now all of a sudden, boom, you know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna, and if they say no, well, then at least then you could go, okay, well, what would make it feel right? Do you feel like we're even going in the right direction in this conversation? I do feel like we're okay. So what do you feel we're missing? Well, I feel you're missing this one little thing, right? Okay, so if we throw that in, would that feel like it? Yes, that would feel perfect. Okay, great. Boom.
That makes a lot of sense, and you're kind of letting them in a way lead. And I use this analogy probably a little too much because my wife's a doctor, but the doctor doesn't come in hopefully and say, oh, look, there's a patient, we need to do heart surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to figure out what's going on with the patient and then figure out what needs to happen so that by the time your doctor says, oh, you need heart surgery, you fully believe, yes, I need heart surgery. The doctor isn't trying to sell me a heart surgery. It's what I need to do. Whereas I think too often in sales, we say, well, we do heart surgeries or we do whatever it is we do for people. And I'm talking to someone who's kind of maybe in my target market, so let me try to convince them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wonder why I get so much pushback and resistance and so on versus letting them explore whether it's the right thing to do. And if it's not, send them away, right? Send them to the right person for them. Don't keep trying to convince them to do something that isn't right for them.
Right. Well, if you know your target market, you should have your process for bringing people in should eliminate virtually all of the wrong people.
Okay.
So that by the time you're actually talking to somebody, they should be 98% perfect and perfectly set up, et cetera, for you. If you're, again, it's the effectiveness of your positioning and your lead gen process. But if you have a very general lead generation process, then, you're going to have that pain in the ass where, you're going to be talking to a number of people who aren't right for you. And if you can make that emotional disconnect and say, all right, I'm not going to do heart surgery on this person, but but I want them to leave here having had me give them the best that I can. Right now, what is the best that I can give them? Because that's the other question a lot of people ask. What's the best that I can give them, as opposed to what's the best that I can do for me? So how do I sell them on a heart surgery for 10 equal payments, as opposed to I was going to try and get you to pay all at once, but what if I broke it down into 10 payments for you? So last chance. I'll throw in I'll throw in teeth whitening. Okay. So if we can get them to what's the word I'm looking for? If we can get ourselves actually out of the picture and say, how can I serve best? Mm-hmm. Then even if the person leaves and doesn't buy from you, they're going to say, hey, that guy, I recommend that guy, even though I wasn't able, to work with them. I have people, right. I have people that I have a half-hour conversation with, and I'm not the right fit. But then I'll get like 5 freaking referrals from them. I'll be like, I talked to Erik, and we're just not ready for him, blah, blah, blah. But I think he'd be great for what's going on with your company. You should talk to him. I don't even ask for half of the stuff. It's like I really, when I have a conversation with somebody, I'm not going to ask them for a referral because I didn't do anything for them. But then I'll get a referral and it'll be out of the blue. I got one today. An ex-client that I did like a very small project for, and then wasn't able to help them with anything else, and all of a sudden I got this referral out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and it's because I'm willing to say at some point, okay, I can't help you any further, or you're not ready for this, or whatever. And I think that's it's fear that an opportunity is going to get away, and we probably lose 10 opportunities for every one opportunity we try to force fit, the square peg in the round hole.
Right, and I think it's one thing if you say, well, there's a bird in the bush and a bird in the hand and so on, but if you have a crappy opportunity that you can try to force into the wrong place, or you can get a bunch of really great opportunities, not only are you going to make a lot more money, everything is going to go better, right? You're going to feel better, you're going to serve clients better, they're going to be happier, and everything is going to go a lot more easily. And it kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning, which is, what's your positioning? If you're a generic lawyer, if you're a generic web designer, and there's 1,000 other people that could do this stuff, it's going to be very hard for you to even know internally, even if you're trying to follow this advice and serving the customer properly, it's going to be hard for you to know if you're the right fit or not. Whereas if you have I help people whose wealthy husbands cheated on them and now going through a divorce, very clearly, does this person qualify or not? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to waste your own mental cycles on it, right? Just like the buyer is spending a lot of energy trying to make a decision, you're trying to make a decision whether you're doing it consciously or not. Am I staying in the sales cycle? What do I have to do next? And if there's a bunch of gray area about whether you should even be helping this person, you're wasting a ton of bandwidth that you could probably apply more productively if you had a more clear definition of who it is you help.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
I feel like I have to reveal something for folks who have not visited your LinkedIn profile. There's a couple of interesting things. One is clear differentiator, right? You're not just a sales coach. You're the Bruce Lee of lead generation. Are obviously much more memorable. And then something further down your page, I noticed that you set a sales record at Champs Sporting Goods in 2 hours when you were 17. So I feel like that story deserves a little bit of time, and I'm going to have a sip of wine and listen to how you did that.
Okay. Well, it was it was really luck of the draw. I mean, this is back in 1986. Yeah, 1986. So Champs was still a relatively new store at that point in time, and they had opened our store in Paramus Park, New Jersey, and I was working there. It was a Saturday morning, and we had the store was mostly pushing clothing, sneakers, that kind of stuff, but and tennis rackets. We had all this stuff. But in the middle of the store, we had this big, I think it was Darcy, like a Darcy 2000 something workout systems. One of those things that's, it was like a leg press on one side and a bench on the other, and you could do like 20 different exercises on it and stuff like that. The kind of thing that ends up holding people's laundry. And but a guy came in and he was talking, and you could tell he was well built. And I mean, I worked out too. I was a bodybuilder. Well, I should say bodybuilder, but I was heavily into lifting back at that point in time. So I was able to, and I remember my boss hated it, but I used to wear, because it used to get cold in the store all the time, and it was December. I was wearing my Gold's Gym sweatshirt over my Champs work shirt, because we were supposed to be wearing these tight little, polo shirts, the ugliest goddamn things in the world. They're gray with red stripes, but my Gold's Gym shirt was gray with red printing. So I would wear that. My boss would be like, "Eric, take that off." I'm like, "I'm freezing. I can't take it off. I'm freezing. Turn the air conditioning off in this place." So, we got into a conversation, and somehow, we're talking about this thing. And and remember, this is going back 30 years, but I vaguely remember the first conversation. The guy worked out at the gym, obviously, but like wanted something for his home, blah, blah, blah. And before I know it, I'd sold this thing. So he leaves, and I don't know, 10 minutes later, some other person comes on in, and they're staring at this thing. My boss is like, and we didn't get commissions. This was the great thing. We didn't get commissions. It was just like he would just send, whoever he thought was most likely to do something. So the guy's staring at it. He just looked, go get it. Shit. Okay. So over I wander, blah, blah, blah. And before I know it, I had sold 2 of these things, and like they had just introduced these to the store, So the stores were mostly just clothing stores and like small tennis balls, sunglasses, kind of thing. So they just introduced these things. So all of a sudden, in like the space of an hour, I sold 2 of these things, and my boss, he like runs the numbers, and he's just like, he comes back out. He's like, I'm doing the numbers on these two units you just sold with all the attachments and everything else like that. He's like, you just broke a record, for the whole company. And I'm like, really? It's like, yeah, you just broke a record. I'm like, great. And he's like, yeah, I'll give you 10 extra minutes of lunch. So that was it for breaking the sales record for Champs Sporting Goods. I got 10 extra minutes of lunch. Great. So I get 55 minutes instead of 45 minutes. You're the best. Yeah.
I had a job in high school selling sneakers too, and I certainly didn't set any sales records, but I can appreciate the 10 extra minutes of lunch being the big reward. Now, again, tying this all the way back to the beginning, you were modest. You said it's the luck of the draw, and I'm sure there was a certain element of luck involved there. But the fact that you actually worked out and you were buff or whatever, and you could speak to these people in a language that they could appreciate, I'm sure had something to do with it. If I had walked over there especially when I was in high school and tried to sell them these machines, I'm sure it would have gone a whole different way. Whether or not I presented the same information, I just wouldn't have been positioned appropriately to sell something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's affinity, which again, goes back. It's a subconscious thing. So if you're a big guy, if you're a muscle guy or a guy who lifts, and then you see another guy who lifts, there's that affinity. Like this guy knows, this guy has seen the inside of a gym. This guy has seen a barbell. So we had guys there that, were sticks, who if they'd walked up, they could have pulled out the sheet and read the specs or anything else like that. But, I was able to look at machines like that. And I was able to be honest about what I thought the weaknesses and the strengths of the machine were. Mm-hmm. I think it's, for bench pressing, I think it's great because you're never going to have a problem in terms of, if you can't lift the weight and you let go, it's not like the way the handle's designed, it's not going to press into your chest. So you're not going to be, the weight's not going to drop on you because there's a stack behind you. So you're safe that way. By the same token, the quad presses, were okay, but you really had to keep an eye on the the wheel or whatever in the joint where the cord was running through, because if that thing got sticky, it was going to add resistance to the weight when you were doing it. So if you wanted to have a smooth workout, you're going to have to make sure you oiled that thing or greased that thing on a regular basis to make sure it's running smooth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can talk that, and I can talk, the usefulness of it. And yeah, so there was a natural affinity that played to me. So, are there really accidents in the universe? No, it wasn't really, say, luck of the draw. It was, just an affinity. I happened to be there. That guy happened to be there. He happened to recognize me as, standing next to something that might help him lift weight. And I looked like I lifted weights because I did. And, the universe just took its natural course from there.
What a great story. And I cannot say that I set any sales records selling sneakers. But hey, I've taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate the advice. Are there any parting shots that you want to leave people with?
Sure. Can I give away a gift?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I think, like I said, the beginning of all this of getting really perfect, or to build your business the way that you want, is to understand, to really create affinity basically with your target market at that subconscious level. And that begins with you understanding, you going in deep to yourself and asking yourself a lot of questions in order to be able to understand your target market at a much deeper level. I created a program. It's called the Ultimate Qualified Lead Profile Toolkit. And it's normally $97, but I'd like to give it away free to everybody who's listening to this. And all they got to do is go on over to our website. It's Guru Selling, GURU Selling. So GURUSELLING.com/toolkit. Just go on over guruselling.com/toolkit, and you can grab yours. And it's about an hour-long video training, 8-page workbook. I'm going to ask you a bunch of funky normal questions and then some funky questions, and it's going to help you to get at a deeper level with yourself. I call it 5 different dimensions of understanding your target market, and you'll come out of there having a much clearer understanding of who you're after, why you're after them, and what kind of experience you want to have with them. And I think it'll just it'll help you to understand how to attract and connect with your target market at a much easier and much deeper level.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Erik.
Thank you.